So, the main thing I want to emphasize today is silence. And I always emphasize the main two simple teachings that we really always talk about, even on the previous webinars, is acceptance and inquiry. Because ultimately, what they are pointing you to is silence, and is to see instead of from the level of mind, from interpretation or judgment or an idea about what you are and what life is. It's a total letting go of points of view and sort of acknowledging your true view, in which points of views arise and subside temporarily. And so when we talk about this teaching in a direct manner like this, it is only valuable if it is pointing us to that silence. We can sort of talk about the conceptual philosophy of many of these things, spiritual or material, but it only holds value, any benefit, if it is pointing you to that silence. So, why do we run away from silence? Because, see, here and now, if you just close your eyes, automatically your attention is just latching onto something, whether it be the sound of the car outside or some feeling happening in the body or sensation, or most obvious is just the thought, this thought and the next thought and the next thought. And so when we talk about silence, turning away from the interpretations and judgments and projections, and sort of collapsing the attention in its source. And what that really means is just being aware, not of anything, but rather of being aware itself. So being aware that that I am aware. In this simple acknowledgement, attention is not on anything. And you can call this lack of objective focus silence. The reason we continue to run away from it is because in silence, what you believe you are cannot arise to figure out the teaching or try to get somewhere. Please see this. In silence, in the lack of objective focus, the you that claims I can't understand this, or I am this and that, I'm going through this, I'm suffering that, this one is not to be found there. This mental idea of what we believe we are, and for us to continue to maintain this image, we always need to have the attention latched onto something, any object, physical or subtle, which is why the attention is always just jumping from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. So in a way, you resist silence, you avoid silence because you feel like you're losing this sort of personal existence. The mind creates a sense that I'm losing something, or that in my activity, in my latching on to something, there's greater benefit. So that which constantly tries to figure out the teaching through conceptual philosophy or discussion and all that, just constant in concepts, that one ceases to be. And so the moment you actually just be still, mind often arises with greater force as a resistance. So acknowledging this itself is a very big thing, because then you can be here, acknowledge your own existence, which is not mental, the sense I am here, I am alive, your very sense of being. And the moment you just acknowledge this, already some commentary is arising on this, or some random commentary about something that you're doing later, or something that you're trying to become, or what life is, or what should be. This you can call the personal self. It is just this stream of thinking, feeling, doing. If you just sit here silently, all of this is already unraveling and arising in front of you. And this is a great thing. This is not a problem. Regardless of the nature of your thinking, here and now, even acknowledge that some interpretations or judgments are perhaps arising. See that they are not a problem, and see that you have the capacity to look, acknowledge, and turn away. Turn towards what? Not another thing, but your own self. Just the very sense of being here. This is perhaps the first great discovery when practicing this teaching, that as the mind arises and whatever it says, I have the capacity to look at it, acknowledge the fact that it arose entirely spontaneously without me choosing it to arise and without me choosing what it will be saying. It's just always arising, saying anything, a bunch of things all the time. So acknowledging that this is happening spontaneously and that I could see this and not have to believe in it, not have to buy into it. This itself, just this, is already so freeing, because until now, every single little mental projection and whatever it was coded in, perhaps fear or anxiousness or worry or negativity, we just automatically believed in. And we didn't just believe in it, we also identified with it. We take it to be ourself, my voice. So as you become more quiet, you're acknowledging that it doesn't have to be this way. And you're acknowledging the spontaneous nature of mind. And even though every thought arises as it's almost like you speaking, it is my voice. You're being able to watch this from a distance. And please do it now. See that your thoughts are so subtle, whatever is arising right now. They're quite literally invisible, yet you know them. There's an automatic knowing of them that you are not trying hard to maintain. And when these thoughts arise, it really arises as like, I am speaking. But notice that what it's saying, you're not choosing. Even when you actually sit here and say, I'm going to try not to think anything, it just continues to go on. So you see, this is only a problem and it will only frustrate you if you also just identify with this one thought that arises that says, I want to stop the mind. The mind should not be going and I want to just be free of it. Mind says this, and you also take this to be yourself. And now you've created a conflict. Instead, here, you're being invited to acknowledge the simple fact that the thinking, the thoughts arising, subsiding, are arising in your seeing, your knowing, your awareness. Even the thought that says, I want to stop mind, is also just another thought, seen. See if you can watch that one from a distance. Not some distance over there, but from your true place, from where you're already seeing that thought, from where you're already knowing that thought. Is the awareness of that thought offering any commentary on that thought? Is it passing any judgment? And don't think about this, simply look. Even if something says, yes, it is passing a judgment, recognize that even that is just another thought seen by who? Me. See that you can simply acknowledge that thought and not have to care about what it is saying, not have to believe in it, not have to go into more thinking about it. If more thinking arises, it's okay. Don't launch a battle against it, but simply acknowledge that it also arises in what? That in which it arises, that by which it is seen, is that rejecting it, or is that resisting it, or offering any sort of commentary or judgment on it? Look, as what are you looking? As what are you aware of this thought and whatever it said? See that mind cannot help you in this investigation because anything the mind says will also just be another projection, another thought, which is seen. So even if it says the conceptually correct answer or just always jumping to any conclusion, it just doesn't have any value because, again, it is simply just another concept that it offers, another projection, another mental movement which arises and subsides. In what? So you, the seeing of even that very subtle thought, as what do you see that? When you launch this sort of investigation, don't be so quick to try to jump to any conclusion. And actually, an approach that will help you is just not trying to come to a destination, not trying to come to any conclusion, just being open to looking, even if there's not necessarily no trying to find anything, just looking for the genuine sake of looking. And notice quickly what happens when you look, when you're genuinely looking. As what am I aware? What knows this thought? Again, it turns the attention away from the thought. Automatically, what it was saying becomes irrelevant, and the attention is just here because it can't really go to anything to find the answer to this question because any sensation that it goes to cannot be what it's seeing because I see the sensation. Any image that it goes to cannot be it because I see the image. Same thing with another thought, with another feeling. All of these are objects that I see. But as what do I see these objects? Because the attention can't go anywhere in your objective experience to find the answer to this, it's just here. It's almost like a collapse of attention. And it brings you to the same simple acknowledgement of being aware. This is silence. In being myself, I come to understand more and more my nature, almost like an endless unfolding, mind being able to put together simple little pieces of it afterwards. Mind tries to think about me, but it fails to go there because mind is only useful in trying to describe or understand objects. Mind itself being an object is only good for understanding other objects. It only functions in the realm of objects. The moment it seeks to understand me, it falls silent. That which is looking, that which is aware of my words right now, that which is aware of any interpretation the mind is offering on my words right now, that one, is that itself an object? Don't assume, look. Can we find any sort of objective quality or shape or form of that which is looking? Or any object that arises, any shape that comes, any sense, any feeling? Are those all just in the seeing? Any compartment that I try to put this in, anywhere I try to locate it, any limitation that I try to find for it, those things seem to be an object that it sees. So can it really be that? And any time when you're sort of investigating in this way, when it becomes too wordy, when it becomes too many thoughts in your own head about this, trying to figure it out, just become empty once again. Here you are giving yourself the license to be free of figuring out anything or even trying to understand anything. You're genuinely just looking with a complete acceptance of not finding. You're wanting nothing out of this. See if you could sort of have this approach, this attitude. The moment you don't care about understanding, then what do you care about thoughts and what they're saying? Just discard all that you see, all that the attention is on, and instead just be aware that I am aware. I exist. The sense of existence, of being, almost like a stamp of here-ness, realness, aliveness. So again, in being myself, in knowingly acknowledging my essence, I come to understand its nature. This frees you of always trying to just dwell in conceptual philosophy and is ultimately much simpler. So don't run away from silence. So as we proceed with the rest of this call, as we do the sort of question and answer, just keep this in your acknowledgement. And don't hold on to your question necessarily. Don't worry, the question will still be there. Even if you forget about it, then most likely it wasn't even an important question. Because sometimes we're really holding on to a question or something, some sort of thought or idea, while everything else that's being said or the what is important is then just completely neglected. But see that as we go through this, the rest of this call, if you can just knowingly be here, be aware, and all that arises, all that's happening right now, continue to acknowledge how it's seen by what? It is appearing by, in what? And seen by what? That it is within the awareness. You're knowing nothing right now outside. Because usually we just believe me, this body. The moment we consider, okay, me, this body, now the world that is outside of me is the outer, and then this thoughts and feelings is the inner. And it is me, this body, which is aware. So, at least just for the rest of this call, challenge this paradigm and see that the world as it appears to you right now, which is your computer screen, my face, the other people's face, the room you're sitting in, along with the body. Body, we can also just put in the category of world, along with the thoughts and feelings and sensations. All that is in your seeing, in your awareness. And the knowing itself, the awareness itself, don't be so quick to give it a shape or a name or attribute an object to it. Be completely okay not knowing what sees, but it's a very fact that I see. So see the rest of the call from that view. Okay. So let's get to the questions. I'm going to get to a few first that were pre-submitted by some of you. So the first question is how to abide in the self always? Or is that even possible? Never make an, I would say, never make an objective or even make this into a task to abide as the self. The point is actually to recognize that I am the source of seeing, of knowing, you know? That even because what do you call not abiding in the self? You call that when the attention is just latching onto objects and there's just you yourself have identified as an object, this body or the bundle of thoughts, which are now concerned and immersed in other things. So never make an objective out of that because then this one can never abide as awareness. And this one, it will always feel like it's flopping in and out. The point is to see this one that flops in and out as an object in your effortless seeing. You see, even when you're immersed in thoughts, is there not still a knowing of thoughts? You may not acknowledge it, but there's still a knowing of the thoughts. There's still an awareness of those of that unconscious thought activity just happening. And so see that you are reporting that I am not abiding as the self. So what is seeing that movement of attention being very, very scattered and immersed? See that that one is an object of your seeing, object in your knowing. Because it is not me coming from outside of your experience to tell you that you are seeing this. You say that I know of this. And so this must just be acknowledged. And repetition, accept that, like accept that a certain worldview is being practiced over and over again. So now just you're beginning to realign, but see that like as you come back to the natural perspective, it is ultimately much simpler because that which is natural and correct doesn't have to be fabricated or maintained. As it is seen to be the case, then it establishes its place. And it's no longer challenged by every other thought or every other movement in mind. So see that as long as you identify as an object of your seeing, this one will always flop in and out, and this one will say things like, "Is it even possible? Why even bother?" And that again keeps you just engrossed and immersed in thoughts as myself. So this one that I am taking myself to be, we must see that this is too an object in my seeing, in my knowing. And this is not me assuming that. Just that is what the inquiry is. It is a genuine looking into your experience here and now to see and just looking what is aware. And as you run through the layers, you see that, okay, the world is something that I am aware of changing. Even the body, I am very, very aware of changing, feeling different all the time, looking different all the time. So it is not essentially myself. We're not rejecting the body or the world. Is you're just seeing that essentially that which knows is not the body or the world. And then you run through some more layers. The personality seen to change. The belief systems seen to change. The ideas about myself seen to change. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, all objects in my seeing appearing and subsiding, coming and going like trains. So, from which platform are you watching all these trains coming and going? Because to see a train come and go, you must be in one place. So from where do you see these trains come and go? Right now, the attention is just hopping on whichever train it sees and just going with it. And then just hopping to the next one and the next one and the next one, taking it to be, you know, what I am. So you are now just learning to see it in this way, that this I that remains changeless, and it is the only constant in my changing experience. What is this? And you're running through the layers and see that that which says, I am not aware or I am not abiding, this one, you must come to see it as an object. And then it can arise and say whatever it wants, yet you will not give it that life. You will not give it that identification, that sense of self. And so in this way, that is what we call the sort of the unraveling of the personal self, is always offering up some sort of idea or concept or interpretation. But as you just learn to see and no longer buy into, it starts to lose its foundation, which is the very just continuous thought activity. So, no need to abide in the self. See that you are that which sees. You see that you are that which is aware, in which all that is arising and subsiding is seen. The moment you identify as an object, now you're in the battle with other objects and trying to figure out and stuff. You see this clearly, then this is the place of silence. It is the place of clear seeing, pure seeing. And when I say seeing, I do not mean eyesight. Even the lack of eyesight, if you close your eyes, eyesight disappears, but the seeing remains. It is the seeing, the awareness, the knowing, to which the eyesight and the lack of eyesight are known. They report, to which all the other senses report. So you're creating a certain depth in your understanding of yourself, not a mental fabrication, not believing yourself to be something deeper, but just through direct seeing, acknowledging that what I am essentially is sort of subtler than that which I see, that which is appearing and disappearing in me. The next question is about surrender. And the question is, when we talk of surrender or letting go, who is the one surrendering? What is being surrendered to what? Is there a spiritual will that comes into play deciding how successful one is at this, or is it pre-decided? Are you waiting to have all these questions answered to surrender? So see that in a way, it is when there's a certain ripeness and maturity, I believe, when there's even a motivation or interest in the concept of surrender, that is the sort of the time for it. That is the surrender happening. And it is not necessarily someone surrendering and someone surrendering something, but it's almost just like a clearing up of this cloud in which doership is a notion, in which ownership, identification is a notion. So surrendering itself is the clearing up of this cloud in which we constantly make distinctions as me and something, and me taking ownership of this thought and this action. So that is the sort of way you can look at it. But ultimately, don't wait to have these sorts of questions completely fully understood and satisfied with for you to actually practice. See that only in the practice of surrender can it actually become clear to you. Even if right now it feels like I, something, am surrendering, that's fine too. But continue to see through the very the guidance that we did, where you continue to see that what I am continuing to define myself as is an object in my seeing, and that continues to just clear up this cloud, which creates a lot of these false notions and confusions, which then it says need to be figured out and solved before any progress can happen. The next question is, how do you tell if you are in a peaceful state versus being the peace? There was a quote by Nisargadatta Maharaj in the book I Am That, and he asked the questioner, he asked, because the questioner said something along the lines of, I'm at peace and things are fine. And he asked the questioner, what kind of peace is it? Is it the peace of having what you wanted, or is it the peace of not wanting what you do not have? And so see that the first piece is very, very conditional, and it is immediately challenged by the changing circumstance or the changing mood, thought, any person. And so the sort of conditional piece is what you can just call a sense of feeling pleasant because things are the way that the mind accepts right now. So see that real peace is in the very awareness of whatever may be the object present here and now, whatever feeling, whatever thought, whatever circumstance. And this itself, I believe, is the spiritual practice, is through practice seeing this when the experience is going this way and that way, always unexpected, always something new, spontaneous. That is your opportunity. That is your time to see. And in that way, that's why we always say also is that like the experience is the greatest teacher, because it is experience, your unique experience, which triggers and pokes the personal self in all the ways that it needs to be poked, or bringing to the surface all of its beliefs, all of its ideas, feelings, the trauma. And it is that simple. You're able to see it, acknowledge it, and let it be. In the letting it be, you transcend it because you're ultimately in seeing it, in acknowledging it, in observing it without interpretation, without judgment, pure observation of what is arising in this moment, the contents of this moment. Pure observation in which there's no agenda to get rid of, to manipulate, to change. That is what we call acceptance. Acceptance is not, okay, me saying a mental yes to what is here right now, but rather a pure observing, observation without psychological chatter, psychological judgment, analysis, interpretation, projection, just a seeing, a knowing, and letting the contents be as they are for this moment. That is the seat of acceptance. That is the seat of peace. And see that that peace is not a feeling and it is not conditional, because the conditions come and go, but that which sees from where you are aware of the coming and going, that is the only place peace can be present. And so I would say peace is just a letting go of identifying as an object. And so let the experience walk you into this. And look at each experience that does arise as the opportunity to see this clearly. That right now I have the capacity, because usually we hear these teachings and they make us feel good and everything, but then and we even want to practice, but then something happens, it really triggers us in some sort of way. And in that moment, even if someone reminds you to practice, you'll be like, please, not right now. I'm not in the mood for this. So so that is the whole delusion of it. You must see that it is actually that moment where you don't want to. That is the biggest opportunity. That is the only time. Because it's very, very easy to be peaceful when things are completely fine, you know? Only when your circumstances, your self image is challenged, that is when it really comes in. Okay, now, who are you? So Steve asked in the chat, how has your ability to be aware of your true self, to be present, that is, without identifying with your thoughts and the world around you, how has that affected you in your life? I would say ultimately, none of this work is for creating a change in your life. You know, sometimes it often really does start out like that, where we even encountered a teaching like this because either we believe that it will make us more successful and happier, which was my case, mixed with the second case was also because you're suffering greatly. You're going through some pain and suffering, and now you wish to be free of it. So it was sort of a mix for me. And I would say that although you start with the goal, okay, I'm going to practice this because I want to create a pleasant experience and see that that is truly the motive of mind to create an ever present, pleasant experience that is always just flowing smoothly according to my liking, which are dependent on my beliefs about what I think is good or bad. That is why the mind is always disappointed in experience. But as you go sort of explore the teaching deeper, you start to wake up to the much greater reason why it came into your life, which is it's waking you up to a deeper understanding of what you, in essence, are. And here is a powerful opportunity. You can either remain attached to your little sort of other interests and attachments to why you want to practice this teaching to create a sort of change in your inner or outer experience, or you can go straight for what the teaching is actually there for, to really want to discover at a deeper and deeper level, understand in a clearer and clearer way what I essentially am and what is the nature of all this. And that is what I call genuine sort of interest, genuine um, earnestness for this. And as you sort of refine your intention for this and become more genuine in this approach, now the pleasant and the unpleasant become sort of a game. And the pleasant and the unpleasant are accepted to arise and subside, which is what they always should have. It's just the flow of the good and bad, the positive, negative, pleasant, and unpleasant. And now, surprisingly, because you have sort of changed your intention from just wanting to manipulate the bad into the good and the good to maintain the good, now that there's a greater acceptance of the pleasant and unpleasant, now you generally see that life moves on with greater harmony. And this, in the Hindu terminology, they call it the sattva quality of mind, which becomes present, which is harmony. Sattva means harmony, purity, clarity. And so circumstances surely reflect that back to you, and your own thoughts and emotions as well, as you are becoming, as you are understanding yourself in a deeper way prior to emotions and thoughts and world. Now naturally you're not reacting, you're not suffering what is, because usually the mind finds an experience to suffer, and then the mind suffers its own suffering. So it's reacting to the world, and then you ask yourself, what is reacting? It is the mind reacting. What is reacting to your own reaction and suffering that? that I shouldn't be reacting because I'm a spiritual person. It is also just mind, just reacting. And so now all this becomes an object in your seeing. So you see the same thing, we go back to what we spoke of earlier. All that is arising, this thing, this thought that says this experience should not be this way, along with this reaction that says I shouldn't, I'm, this is a negative thought and I want to be free of it. I don't want to react in this way. So see all of this as an object because it is. And it instantly places you outside of it in the seat of acceptance, of peace. And so naturally now this all experience which flows from you follows in suit. And so I would say that it has definitely experientially, things become much more peaceful and harmonious. And many of your own selfish motives, many of your own desires to sort of manipulate and your own limiting ideas about yourself and the world come to the surface and they are shed away. And so there's a greater purity in your own thinking, feeling, and doing. And that is what you can, is the summary of the sattva quality of mind. Whereas the other two qualities, from the little I do know of that, is the rajas quality of mind, which is the restless quality of mind, the always wanting to manipulate, always wanting to chase. And the third one is the tamas, which is the very sort of destructive quality of mind, sluggish, lethargic, victimhood. And so the sattva quality erases or minimizes the other two. Good. Glad that helped. Next question is, hi Sunny, I very much enjoy your videos and find them helpful. My question, I know all of the dynamics for making a shift in consciousness, and I have many of the tools. I have been challenged by my lifelong fears and anxieties, what people think of me, my need for financial security, my lack of self-confidence, which interfere with the process. Now that I have recently just become unemployed, the volume of the fear and anxiety can become overwhelming at a time when I can most benefit from moving forward in higher consciousness. What can you suggest to help me move forward when I am having such a hard time letting go of my fears and my attachment to my current lifestyle? You'll notice at a time like this, and this is something you'll 100% acknowledge, perhaps in 5 years, that a time like this will help you understand yourself and life deeper than any other sort of circumstance. As much as we run towards pleasant circumstances and everything, we don't learn much from them. If we are wise, you'll learn from pleasant circumstances as well. But sometimes we really need these sorts of really, really uncertain times where everything about who we believe we are, what we want, everything is challenged. And so first first thing first is to implement the teaching to the best of your ability, always. And you can keep it as simple as this: acceptance and inquiry. Always practice to the best of your ability. That's all you can do. One thing I will share with you is, even from my own personal experience, every time things were very, very uncertain, I usually had the habit of, even when things were good, sort of placing myself in that sort of place in life just through because what I wanted to achieve at that time, what I wanted to do, always made me put myself in a situation where I never knew if things were going to work out. And I got actually sort of used to really being in the midst of uncertainty. And what that sort of time will do for you is it will bring up a lot of these fears to just be looked at, to be faced, not confronted. We're not trying to reject or fight the fears, but they will make you aware of a lot of this stuff. And going through that time will give you such a great conviction in life's capacity to always look out for you also, into realizing this this thing that mind is always wanting to completely secure everything in the future. Mind is always wanting to make sure everything is okay, so there is no uncertainty. But it suffers that, and then it fails because life continues to be uncertain. But once you are in the midst of uncertainty and you're moving forward despite your fears, and you're just sort of handing over that control to life, doing to the best of your understanding and taking the best action that you want, but you're placing your well-being in the hands of life itself. Then you naturally start to see how the circumstances unfold in such a creative way that mind could not conceive and plan every step following the next, which you are not receptive to from this place until you take that next step. So all of this unfolds in a very creative way in which you're going to be taken care of. But more importantly, you're going to transcend many of these sorts of fears that arise, these sorts of insecurities, these ideas, if you're attentive. You can go through this sort of experience too and just suffer it and then just fall into further suffering. But if you're really up for it, see that more important than your circumstances ending up being okay, what is important that right now you go through this time attentively and seek to learn that which it is, the lesson it has in store for you, the understanding it is making available to you, because that will stay with you. The circumstances changing to the more positive circumstances you want, they're just going to once again later on, if you don't learn the lesson, turn into the negative ones. So don't be so focused on the circumstance itself, but instead seek to understand yourself, see the fears that are arising, and rather than reacting to the fears, learn to actually, again, right, observe the sensations of the fear. See that fear is not to be feared itself, is not to be avoided itself, to be running away from. Turn the attention away from the projections that are causing the fear. Oh, what is going to happen to me? Am I going to be okay? This, that. Bring the attention to the fear itself and just observe. Allow it to be. And just focus on the task at hand. And you'll start to understand yourself that a sort of a greater power is working through you, and your circumstances will take care of themselves. But more importantly, you will understand yourself at a deeper level, shed away many of these fears, and really deepen the seeing and gain a greater conviction in life. Trust. That's one thing we must all learn to do. Trust and be completely peaceful in uncertainty. There's a book I read when I just encountered the spiritual teaching many years ago. It was the term that the author gave it was the wisdom of uncertainty. And actually, before my channel was called Personal Mastery Quest, or my website, it was called the wisdom of uncertainty. So the wisdom lies in you establishing yourself in your true essence, your true position, from where you are able to see even the fears and the negativity and whatever is arising. And you're not rejecting it, you're not running away from it, and you're not just seeking to manipulate it. In this, all this dysfunction of the mind will be shed away. And then the circumstances always follow. Tan said, I've heard some teachers advice that one should just get happy even in uncertain situations. I'm just curious how or if this relates to awareness or observing. So see what can be happy in uncertain situations. You see, the person can never be happy in uncertain person can really just never be happy. Even when things are going okay, it's just like, okay, what's next? How do I maintain this? I hope I don't lose this. So the person itself is just a constant sufferer, finds anything to suffer. So what can be happy? Where do you have to go to be happy? If not, if you cannot find it in the person. The person meaning this bundle of thoughts, emotions, sensations, reactions, beliefs, ideas. This one is always offering up many different faces. One time it's sad, one time it's excited, the next moment it's sad again. So see that there's no stability here. This one is purely dependent on the movement of the world, the circumstances. The moment the circumstances turn this way, it'll turn that way. And then we take this to be ourselves and we say, how is it even possible to be happy when my circumstances aren't perfect? So that is what we must see, that this one cannot be happy. This one is unstable. So what is aware of this one? Because there's still an I here. There's a me which knows what I call the person. I can be happy despite the person, but I must come to see how I am not the person. I'm not just, that is not the extent of my reality. And so by continuing to make it clear to yourself that it is not the person that is aware, it is not the bundle of thoughts that is aware. It is in the awareness in which the thoughts arise and subside. So if you see that diagram back there, I don't know how well you can see it. And I wish it was closer. But you see, like, it's very simple and it's not like perfect, the diagram, but like it portrays certain ideas with a greater simplicity. You'll notice that the person is like in the middle of this material and the subtle. The material, which we call the body, and the subtle is simply the thoughts, the sensations, the emotions. The bundle of that is what we call the person. And this one has a story and ideas. We believe that this person, which is in the middle over there, is aware, you see? But it is not the person being aware. We must come to see that the person is an appearance in awareness. That which is aware right now is seeing the person. So that is the guidance that we did earlier. As what are you aware? Because if we don't look carefully, we just assume that I, Sunny, this person, am doing awareness. I am aware. And that is what inquiry is really helping you clearly see here and now, not through 10 years of spiritual practice. It is helping you clearly see that me, even here and now, in essence, from where I am aware, that one is not a shape, it is not a form, it is not an object. And so this really frees you from compulsively going with the movements of the person, which are very unstable. Okay? So in this way, awareness and observing, and so what we call acceptance and inquiry is directly related to this. It is what brings about this understanding more and more and clear. Because acceptance, right, as we said, the pure observing without judgment, it diminishes all conflict with what is seen. Because otherwise, right now, I'm in conflict with this emotion. I don't want it to be there. I don't like this person. It shouldn't be there. I don't like this circumstance. It shouldn't be there. I'm just in conflict. And what I have taken myself to be is just a thought which says, I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like that. So you're in the practice of acceptance, you're bringing all of this, not just the emotion or the person or the circumstance, but even this one that says all this stuff in your seeing. And you're seeing that I can observe and let it be. And all this just always continues to go. And then it's almost like an inborn curiosity as well. If everything I consider myself to be is also an object of my seeing, then what am I? The one seeing. And that is what we call inquiry. And so one is pure observing, whereas the attention is still outward onto objects, but no longer judging the objects, simply the attention on objects. I can look at this bottle without offering commentary. Or I can look at this bottle and be like, okay, this bottle is round. It has a lot of water in it. It's by this brand. I don't really like the way that it looks. I wish I had another. Like that's commentary. So you're able to look at your own thoughts, your own feelings in this way. Thoughts you can simply turn away from because they are that interpretation. But the emotion, let's say, the sensation, the circumstance, you're able to see without offering judgment. This is a freedom that we actually don't even know that we have until we sort of someone is bringing this to us when this teaching is introduced, because otherwise our this constant mental dialogue is just mixed with the sense of me, the sense of beingness. And so once you're able to, and you can practice this with physical objects first before you do it with a subtle object like a feeling, where you can look at the bottle and just look at it without falling into any interpretation, and notice that the moment that you do, and just turn away from it and just observe. So, in this way, you're actually able to have an authentic relationship with life, with the objects of this moment, the contents of this moment, relinquishing all conflict, all battle. This is itself the end of suffering. And then inquiry is simply, as what am I seeing? Which brings the sufferer into question. Really good. Happy it helped. Next question is, Dear Sunny, sometimes I feel sadness and pain, and I get the feeling that I shouldn't feel. How can I observe the sadness without getting caught up in the feeling? There's no such thing as a feeling that you shouldn't feel. You have to give feelings the freedom to be as they are, you see? See if there's a place within you from where you can let even the deepest guilt arise, the deepest fear arise. The mind creates monsters out of simple little feelings. Whereas, you know how just like your experiences, they're always in motion, just coming and going. In that same way, feelings also just come and go. You know how with open arms, with such open arms, you accept pleasant experiences and pleasant feelings. And what happens? They come and they go. But the moment it is an unpleasant experience, an unpleasant feeling, you just offer so much commentary, so much judgment, so much interpretation, almost like keeping your entire life force focused on it in a very judgmental way, which creates this relationship to it, a clinginess to it. And it continues to not only make you suffer, but it perpetuates the feeling. So first and foremost, you want to acknowledge that you do have the capacity, not after years of spiritual practice. Here and now, you can be with a feeling without rejecting it or running away from it. Don't be afraid of your own feelings. And no matter what anybody says, no feeling is like shouldn't be happening. If it's arising, it is relevant. Let it arise. Instead of seeking to judge, seek to understand, observe. Understanding isn't observing. Understanding isn't in trying to break it down and figure it out because that'll just create more assumptions. Only in pure observation can there be true understanding. Either that which arises is just totally shed away because it is not relevant, or if there is a lesson here for you to learn, then trust me, the mind will only become receptive to it once it is itself empty of those interpretations and judgments. In pure observing, the mind is receptive. And understanding arises on its own, not because a teacher is coming to tell you or you're reading it in a book. So in an empty mind, understanding is it is always receptive to understanding. That is why we talk about silence. So in the beginning of this call, we did a whole guidance on silence, directing you to silence, because it is in silence in which understanding can actually develop and arise. Almost like a direct insight, which then the mind puts into words and then takes credit for. But you could even just see like many of the best ideas you've had, many of the best things you've done, they just sort of arose. It's not something that you sat down one day and you were thinking about it. Okay, so don't reject any feeling and allow yourself to feel it fully. You can watch many of the acceptance videos that I have. If this call already didn't give you a good idea of it, watch the many acceptance videos I have. And I also just released a new what I call the letting go masterclass. Watch that as well. It will greatly help you with that. Javier said, I understand that emotions, fears, reactions are just objects appearing in consciousness, as well as any agenda to get rid of them. They just need to be seen and to let them be without identifying. That being said, how do you feel about consciously putting yourself in that situation that might trigger your fear or rage as a means to hopefully accelerate disidentification that may otherwise take a long time if you're always in your comfort zone? This is an agenda, but it kind of sounds reasonable. So someone who recently joined my program, they asked me the same question, and because there's a great desire to accelerate this. Okay, let me bring all this stuff up so I can be free of it. Why do you want to be free of it? Because you're in resistance to it. You see, so this agenda, you're correct. It sounds reasonable, but it is the agenda itself is a pure resistance to having whatever is here right now. Oh, let me dump all of this stuff quickly as possible so I can now finally live a free life. So don't fall for that. Because see that when you then go look for arguments or fights or things that trigger you and stuff, you're only going to get caught up. You're going to get further entangled in dysfunction and suffering. And the mind's very, very sneaky in this way. It will really make you go into all these avenues which further perpetuate mind. Don't fall for it. The only way, the best and only way, is to see what is arising here and now. There is no comfort zone in this. I promise you, even if you're sitting home every single day and not really engaging with many people, still things will arise which will bring up what needs to be brought up right now. Okay. And that is the only thing that needs to be dealt with. Nothing of the past. And this is something that I always tell everybody that I work with. It's like, you have no limiting beliefs. Don't buy into that. Don't buy into your trauma, especially after you do a little bit of healing work. You know, the thing with healing work is the more healing work you do, the more there is to do. It's just constant, endless healing. But see that, okay, you satisfy your mind a little bit with this healing. First of all, it's still never satisfied. It still feels like I am broken. Then from that point onward, just drop this idea that I have limiting beliefs and I have trauma that I have to heal and let go of. From that moment, live your life as you are living it. You know, just day by day, do what you need to do. See that your experience will unfold in a certain way in which it will creatively bring up to the surface what needs to be dealt with and let go of. Don't take responsibility for this sort of letting go process. Let it happen on its own. Your job is only to be as you are, the seeing in which all arises. Don't take any step further. Do what you got to do, right? Work, action, everything. Live your life. Have fun. Do as you please. But as you're living, live with a certain attentiveness, a certain aliveness. Don't let the contents of your life completely drown the aliveness. That is what most of us are doing. We're just chasing after contents, things, objects, and we're completely blind to our own existence, which makes the chasing possible. So live with a certain attentiveness. And if you do so, what needs to arise and be let go of will arise. And if in that moment you don't react to it, you're simply just allowing it to be and letting it be, it will be let go of. Let's say something does arise and trigger you, and then you fail to observe and you react. That's fine too. The moment of remembrance, right? So see, the moment you remember that, then you feel guilty, like, oh my God, I shouldn't have reacted and I shouldn't have fell for it. See that this itself, right now, you're falling for another reaction. You're identifying as another thought or the emotion of guilt. So you can only practice this in the moment of remembrance, here and now. Regardless of if you are totally unconsciously reacting for 5 hours and now you just realized, that is your opportunity there. Don't use that opportunity to just feel victimized and feel bad about yourself. Here and now, see, diminish all conflict with what you perceive just by no longer offering commentary or interpretation or judgment. See the mind's tendency to do so. See how it arises spontaneously without you wanting to do it or wanting to control it. It just happens. Turn away. And then reestablish, as what am I aware? This will always bring you to that inmost essence, which is ultimately already transcendent of the mental stuff. There's a question by Schlub. So the basic thing is to be done is acknowledging. Well, acknowledging and an actual letting be of the contents as they are, no longer being reactive to the contents. If there's something reacting, then also bringing that under your conscious seeing, your conscious observation, because that which is brought into your conscious observation can no longer operate as you. This reaction that arises, it sort of arises as myself. It makes me contract into that limitation, that feeling, that thought. So the moment you become aware of it, you're already outside of it, free of it. And by acknowledging, letting be, the understanding of it, the willingness to let go of what needs to be let go of, the endurance, the motivation, all will arise through that observing, through that silence. That's what you have to trust. Only in the beginning, because over time trust turns into conviction. And then you cannot find a more practical way to deal with things than this. Because you see, acceptance is not, the mind is always trying to deal with things, but acceptance is not dealing with anything. It is just returning you to your natural viewpoint, your or view, your perspective. Because otherwise, you're just contracting into these temporary little viewpoints, these thoughts and emotions and whatever else, always in battle with each other. Each viewpoint only seeks to serve itself, operates for itself, and is in competition and conflict with all other viewpoints, all other emotion, all other thoughts. So instead of seeing life through this very, very limited lens, you're just returning to your from where you are already seeing, yet you don't yet know. So it's almost like a realignment with your actual self. And as you come into back into alignment with your true self, true seeing, then obviously experience, thoughts, feelings all follow this great, it's all like a great rebalancing process. And so, yes, this is still, the attention is still focused on an object. So that is why you're then, actually inquiring, you're investigating, then what is it that observes? And that is why I place these teachings together. These are the two that I believe are the most effective and really point you directly to that which needs to be acknowledged. So we have time for one more question. The question that I have here is how to remain detached, a loving detachment, from those who are in victim mode or self pity, complaining about their problems and suffering. It's to create a deep humility within your own self. See that that was you once, and see that you didn't really choose for this teaching to come into your life and free you up of a lot of your nonsense. It just happened. It just came into your life. You needed to suffer a certain amount for you to even be interested in certain things like this. Perhaps it's the same with others, you see. So rather than trying to force things onto others, trying to make them wake up to whatever, trying to judge them for, going through that, there must be a certain allowing of what they need to go through in order to wake up to these sort of greater lessons. And as long as you yourself are just approaching life in a humble way, where you're not also becoming arrogant off of what you understand and know, then you will naturally have this attitude. And do see others with this sort of compassion, because it is very, very true. Uh, you did not choose for the teaching to come into your life, and you did not also control the level to which you understand, the degree to which you understand, the speed to which you understand. All these are relative and mental. Let that be. Perhaps actually that is what I say earlier. Live with a certain attentiveness instead of them suffering and being negative and what. See how right now mind is judging. Right now mind is being negative, becoming a victim of them being a victim and giving you so much negativity. So in this way, you are your own what do they call it in science? I forgot. But you are your own like sample which you are observing. The world triggers the person, and the person is what we are observing. There's a quote that says, when the child is playing, the mother watches not the toy. Or wait, so the quote is, sorry, I'm just paraphrasing, that the child watches the toy, but the mother watches the child, not the toy. The toy in this example is the world. The child is the mind, always immersed in the toy. You care not about the world, but care about the child, the mind. What is it projecting? What is it trying to push you into? What is it contracting you into? What is it offering? Because the mind is always immersed in the world. All of your thoughts are just rotating between desire and fear about the world, about things. So That is fine and all, but you learn to watch the mind itself. And it is these judgments that arise, these selfish motives, these all these sorts of contradictions. As you see them, there will be greater understanding of the dysfunction of the person and how the person is a very unstable state. And so automatically a great belief in the person will be sort of fading away. Because right now we believe in everything it says. We believe in all the judgments it offers. By watching it, the belief starts to fade. And you start to actually see that, yes, this person wants to be happy, yet it is always like acting in things in ways that it doesn't produce happiness. It wants to be treated well, but it's treating others poorly. It wants to do this, but it does that. So you see the dysfunction of that, of how the mind is like a problem maker, problem generator. Only when it is imbued with great identification, it's always cooking up these things. But once you are stepping into your true position, then, as I said earlier, the sattva quality, the pure quality, the harmonious quality of mind starts to take over, where now the mind is not being dysfunctional, but rather it is being of value in the way that it is meant to be used, the function that it's supposed to produce, and nothing more. It is not taken to be what I am. Okay. So I hope that today's call offered you clarity on the simple teaching of acceptance and inquiry. And I want to thank you all for being here and for participating and sending your questions in. The next one, I'm not sure exactly when I'm gonna do it, but I'll keep you updated if you are on my email list, or I'll probably also make a post on YouTube. All right. If you do want to continue the study personally with me in a close way, you can also check out my program if today's call really helped you. We do these calls twice a week in the program, so take a look at that. But other than that, thank you for being here. Wishing you a great week ahead. I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.